loses his way in the middle of his life, wanders into a dark forest, and within a matter of hours finds himself standing at the gates of hell. Not metaphorical hell, not going through a rough patch hell, actual hell. A vast underground kingdom of tortured souls, monstrous punishments, and people being condemned with an alarming degree of administrative detail. And somehow this only gets stranger from here. Settle in for this sleepy deep dive into one of the most fascinating, gory, and emotional poems ever written. Let's begin at the beginning. It's the year 1300, Florence, Italy, one of the most extraordinary cities in the medieval world. Wealthy, cultured, full of art and argument and ambition. And somewhere in that city, a poet named Dante Alighieri finds himself lost. Not lost in the way we sometimes mean it. Not misplaced. Lost in the deeper sense. The sense of standing still in the middle of your own life and realizing you are not where you're meant to be. That somewhere along the way, without quite noticing, you wandered from the path you intended to walk. He's 35 years old, the midpoint of a life in the medieval understanding of things. And the image he reaches for to describe this feeling is a dark forest. A wood so dense that the way forward is impossible to see. It's one of the most human openings in all of literature. This simple, honest admission that a man has lost his way. Dante can see a hill ahead of him with a light on it. He moves towards it, but three animals emerge from the trees and block his path. A leopard, fluid and spotted, a lion, proud and still, and a she-wolf, lean and restless, who drives him back into the dark. And then, in the half-light between the trees, a figure appears. It is Virgil, the great Roman poet, dead for over 1,000 years, shimmering calmly in the gloom. He has been sent by Beatrice, the woman Dante loved from childhood, who died young and now waits in heaven. She looked down on him and saw Dante struggling, and sent the greatest poet of the ancient world to help him find his way. Virgil explains that there's a path forward. He goes through the darkness. They will descend into hell together, then climb the mountain of Purgatorio, and then Beatrice herself will take Dante the rest of the way. It's not a comfortable itinerary, but it's the only one available, and so they go. The gate of hell carries an inscription. The last line is the famous one: "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." But what comes before it is worth noting. Hell, it says, was made by divine power, by the highest wisdom, and by primal love. It is, in Dante's understanding, the logical and permanent home of choices freely made. They pass through the gate. Just inside is a vestibule, a kind of threshold, neither in nor out, filled with souls who in life never committed to anything, never chose good or evil with any real conviction. They drift here forever, and Dante moves past them without much interest. They cross the river Acheron by boat, guided by the ferryman Charon, and they descend into hell proper. The first circle is called Limbo, and it is perhaps the most sorrowful place in the whole poem. This is where the virtuous pagans live, the good people, the great thinkers, the philosophers and poets of the ancient world, who died before Christianity, or simply never encountered it. Aristotle, Plato, Homer. Virgil himself lives here when he's not acting as a guide. There is a kind of beauty to it. A great castle, serene gardens, a soft and permanent twilight. But there is also beneath the stillness a longing that never resolves. These souls know that something exists beyond the darkness at the edge of their world. They simply cannot reach it. They move on and downward. The second circle is where the punishments begin, and the first souls Dante encounters are the lustful, caught in a perpetual storm, a great howling wind that sweeps them endlessly through the dark. Two of them, Paolo and Francesca, drift close enough to speak. Francesca tells their story: a marriage without love, a younger brother, an afternoon reading together, a kiss, a husband who found them, and an end to everything. She tells it beautifully and with a kind of tender sorrow, and Dante is so moved that he loses consciousness entirely. He simply collapses. He recovers, and they continue. The third circle holds the gluttons, lying in cold, heavy rain. The fourth holds the needy and the wasteful, pushing great weights endlessly against each other. The fifth is a black, foul swamp, the river Styx, in which the wrathful fight on the surface while the sullen lie submerged beneath it, unable to even speak their grievances properly, their words coming out only as bubbles rising through the mud. They cross the Styx and arrive at the walls of a great fortified city, the city of Dis, and the gates are barred. Even Virgil is uncertain for a moment, and Dante notices and is afraid. But then a messenger from heaven arrives, unhurried, entirely unimpressed by his surroundings, and touches the gate with a wand. It opens and they pass through. Inside are the heretics, lying in open, flaming tombs. Among them, Dante speaks with a great Florentine nobleman named Farinata, who sits upright in his burning tomb, as if he has nothing but contempt for where he is. He and Dante discuss the politics of Florence with a strange, charged directness, enemies acknowledging each other across an impossible distance. Farinata tells Dante plainly that exile is coming for him. Dante listens. They part. Below the heretics, the nature of hell changes. From here downwards, the sins are those of choice. Violence first, and then fraud, which is worse because fraud uses human reason, the greatest gift, as a tool for harm. The violent are divided into three groups. Those who were violent against others lie submerged in a river of boiling blood, watched over by centaurs. The deeper the violence, the deeper the submersion. Those who were violent against themselves, the suicides, have been transformed into twisted, leafless trees in a dark wood, their leaves torn endlessly by harpies nesting in the branches. When Dante breaks a twig from one of the trees, it bleeds and speaks, and the voice that comes from inside is full of such grief that the passage stays with you long after you finish reading it. On a burning plain, beneath a rain of fire, are those who are violent against God and nature, walking or lying on the hot sand. And here Dante meets his old teacher, Brunetto Natini, a man he loved genuinely, who shaped his thinking, whose influence runs through everything Dante became. And here he is, condemned to this burning plain, and Dante doesn't judge him. He speaks to him with real warmth and evident respect, and Brunetto speaks back with pride and generosity, and tells Dante that his destiny is bound up with something larger than the suffering of this moment. And then Brunetto has to go, because stopping is its own additional punishment, and he walks away, and Dante watches him go, and thinks he looks like a man who was winning something, not losing. They descend further over a waterfall, and into the Malebolge. It means, roughly, evil ditches, and it is a great stone amphitheatre, 10 concentric trenches, each one holding a different variety of fraud, each one with its own population and its own particular punishment. The seducers and panderers march in opposite directions, whipped by demons. The flatterers are submerged in filth. The corrupt clergy are buried upside down in holes with fire on their feet. The sorcerers and diviners, those who tried to see the future, walk with their heads twisted permanently backwards, able only to see what is behind them, weeping into the clefts of their own backs. There are corrupt politicians boiling in pitch, and a rather chaotic group of demons assigned to watch over them. There are hypocrites walking slowly in beautiful gilded cloaks that are made of lead inside, heavy beyond bearing. Thieves undergoing strange and terrible transformations with serpents. False counsellors, wrapped each in a single flame, wandering slowly through the dark. Among the flames, Dante speaks with Ulysses, a great wanderer, the endlessly curious, and Ulysses tells him about his final voyage. Sailing past the edge of the known world into the open ocean, driven by the hunger to know what lay beyond, and how he caught sight briefly of a great mountain rising from the sea, the mountain of Purgatorio, before a storm rose up and swallowed his ship and everything ended. It's a story of extraordinary beauty and sadness, and Dante tells it in such a way that even the ending feels almost luminous. In the final ditches, the sowers of discord walk in a loop, and a demon with a sword inflicts wounds on them as they pass. Wounds that heal just in time for the next circuit to begin. Among them, Dante sees a figure carrying his own severed head like a lantern, swinging it gently as he walks. And then the ninth and final circle. The cold is immediate and total. Cocytus, a vast frozen lake, perfectly still, perfectly silent. The traitors are submerged in it at various depths. Those who betrayed family are frozen to their faces, their heads bent. Those who betrayed their country or allies are frozen with their eyes sealed shut by their tears, which ice over before they can fall. In one of the lake's regions, Dante comes across two souls frozen together in the same hole, and one of them is gnawing on the back of the other's skull. His name is Ugolino, and the story he tells of imprisonment, of his children dying around him, of the tower sealed and the food not coming, is one of the most harrowing things in the poem. Dante listens to the end of it, and then turns and addresses the city of Pisa in fury, and the fury is entirely understandable, and then they move on. At the very centre of the frozen lake is Lucifer. He is enormous. 3 faces, 6 wings, beating endlessly and uselessly. The wind from his wings is what keeps the lake frozen, which keeps him trapped, which keeps his wings beating. He He weeps from 6 eyes. In his 3 mouths he chews on the 3 greatest traitors. And there is something about him, not terrifying exactly, but immensely sad. The being who aspired to the highest place in creation, here at the lowest, frozen, weeping, unable to stop. Dante and Virgil climb down his body. At the centre of the earth, gravity reverses. They climb up. A long, dark passage through the rock. And then, ahead of them, a circle of light. Stars. The air is clean. That's the first thing. After everything, the stench and the darkness, and the noise and the weight of it all, there is simply clean air, and an open sky, and stars, and the faint sound of water somewhere nearby. The shift is profound. Even the language of the poem softens. Dante writes about the colour of the eastern sky at dawn, a delicate sapphire, and dew on the grass, and a gentleness that has been absent since the opening of the poem. Purgatory is a mountain rising from the sea in the southern hemisphere. It's a place of hope. And this, in Dante's moral universe, is what distinguishes it absolutely from everything that came before. Every soul here is saved. They know it. The suffering they undergo is not punishment but purification, willingly, even gratefully accepted, because it's moving them towards something they deeply want. Nobody here is in despair. An angel arrives by boat, carrying newly arrived souls, and they are singing as they come. Among them is Casella, a musician friend of Dante's, and Dante asks him to sing one of his settings, a Dante poem. And Casella sings, and everyone, Dante, Virgil, all the souls nearby simply stop and listen. A moment of stillness and beauty after a long descent. Cato, the guardian of the mountain, gently reminds everyone that there is work to do. The base of the mountain holds souls who are not yet ready to begin the climb. The late repentant, those who found their way back to God only at the very end of their lives, must wait here. Their period of delay proportionate to how long they procrastinated. There is patience here, and a kind of peace. These souls have time. They are not anxious. They sit in the evening light and talk and sing and wait. Among them, Dante meets old friends, former rivals, people he knew in Florence. The conversations are warm. There is none of the urgency or desperation of hell. These meetings feel like the conversations you have at the end of a long journey, when you're finally able to sit down and speak honestly with people you haven't seen in years. Dante sleeps on the mountain, and his dreams are gentle and meaningful. He will sleep 3 times in Purgatory, always just before dawn, always waking a little further along in his understanding. The gate of Purgatory proper is guarded by an angel, and on the step before it Dante kneels, and the angel marks 7 letters on his forehead, one for each sin the mountain will address. One will be removed at each terrace. He will feel lighter as he goes. The first terrace is pride. The floor here is carved with images of extraordinary beauty and humility. The Annunciation, David dancing before the ark, the Emperor Trajan pausing his army to hear the plea of a widow, The souls walk bent under great stones on their back, unable to lift their heads, learning to look down rather than up, to see what is beneath them rather than to survey what is around them. It is painful. It is also slowly working. Among them is an artist named Odorisi, who in life was consumed by the competitive pride of his craft. He speaks now with a quietness and generosity that he clearly did not possess when he was alive. He says that earthly fame is just a breath of wind, changing direction before you finish noticing it. One great name eclipses another, and then a third eclipses that, and so on, without end. He says it without bitterness. He says it as someone who has finally, properly understood it. The second terrace is envy. The souls here have their eyes stitched shut with wire, because envy enters through comparison, through looking at what others have, and the healing begins with learning to not look that way. They lean against one another gently for support. Voices in the air around them call out stories of generosity and love. The third terrace is wrath, and here a dense smoke fills the air, the smoke of anger that clouds judgment and makes clear sight impossible. Dante moves through it slowly, carefully, guided by Virgil's voice. Partway up the mountain, in the transition between the terraces of misdirected love and those of insufficient love, Virgil speaks to Dante at length about love itself. It's the philosophical heart of the entire poem, and it's worth staying with for a moment. Every action, Virgil says, whether good or bad, comes from love. The will is drawn inevitably towards whatever it perceives as good. The problem is that love can go wrong in different ways. It can fix itself on the wrong things, or it can be insufficient, or it can be excessive and become consuming. The whole of Purgatorio is a map of these variations. The whole of the moral life is the slow work of learning to love rightly. It's a beautiful idea, and delivered here on a mountain in the middle of the night by a man who cannot himself go where this journey is heading. There is something both tender and a little melancholy about it. The fourth terrace is sloth, the failure to love God with sufficient energy. The souls here run, shouting out examples of enthusiasm to spur themselves on. They're almost endearing, these slightly breathless, earnest souls making up for lost time. The fifth terrace is avarice. The souls lie face down on the ground, pressed against the earth, because in life they fix their gaze on earthly things, and in death they are given the earth they loved so much, right against their faces. Among them is the poet Statius, who has just at this moment completed his purgation entirely, after 500 years, and is free to ascend. The meeting between Statius and Virgil, Statius explaining that it was Virgil's own poetry that led him to Christianity. Virgil moved beyond words to hear it, is one of the most beautiful scenes in the poem. Statius joins them for the rest of the climb. The three of them, two ancient poets and their living companion, move through the upper terraces together, talking about poetry and philosophy and the nature of the soul. The conversations are unhurried. There's a quality of late evening ease to them, the kind of talk that happens when people are comfortable with each other and have no reason to perform. The sixth terrace is gluttony. They pass through a beautiful orchard where extraordinary fruit hangs from branches growing out of the rock, and a voice warns them not to eat. The souls here are gaunt and hollow-faced, reduced by fasting to something barely recognizable. Among them is Forese Donati, an old friend of Dante's, and they speak with the easy warmth of people who know each other well, who have a shared past, who don't need to explain themselves to each other. The seventh and final terrace is lust, and it is a wall of flame. Dante stands at the edge of it and simply will not go in. Virgil encourages him. He still won't. He stands there, knowing it must be done, unable to make himself do it. And then Virgil mentions Beatrice, that she is on the other side, and Dante walks into the fire. He doesn't pretend it doesn't hurt. It burns, and he endures it, and they come through the other side into the cool of the evening, and they find a place to sleep on the steps, and the stars come out. At dawn, Dante wakes from his third dream. A young woman in a meadow, gathering flowers, her name Leah representing the active life, making a garland with her own hands. And they make the final climb to the summit. They reach the Garden of Eden, restored to its original condition, filled with light and bird song and the sound of water and a gentle, warm wind moving through the trees. It's a place of extraordinary softness and beauty, and Dante moves through it slowly, taking it in, the way you move through somewhere you've always wanted to be and can hardly believe you've arrived. He is separated from Virgil and Statius by a stream. On the other bank, a young woman moves among the flowers, singing quietly to herself. Her name is Matilda. She explains the nature of this place, the wind, the water, the perfect preservation of what God originally made. And then a procession appears. It comes slowly through the trees, and it is elaborate and symbolic and deeply beautiful. Candlesticks and figures in white, and great beasts and a chariot drawn through the forest in a blaze of light. And at the centre of the chariot, veiled, an olive crown over a green veil and a red cloak, is a figure that Dante recognises before he can see her face. He turns to tell Virgil, and Virgil is not there. He simply isn't there. No farewell, no final speech. He has reached the limit of where he can go, and he has gone back. And Dante is alone on his side of the stream, and he weeps. Not for purgatory, not for what lies ahead. He weeps for Virgil, his guide, his master, his companion through every dark place, who has simply gently slipped away. And then Beatrice speaks his name. It's the only moment in the entire poem where Dante's name appears, and she says it with love, but also with a directness that doesn't soften what comes next. She knows where he has been. She knows how he wandered. She holds him accountable, and Dante stands before her, barely able to look up, and confesses and weeps, and is forgiven. He is washed in the river Lethe. The memory of sin is taken from him. He crosses the stream and he is ready. Beatrice looks up at the sun. Dante looks at Beatrice, and they begin to rise. Paradise is the most difficult part of the poem to describe, and Dante is the first to say so. He's trying to put into language an experience that exceeds language entirely. What he reaches for, more than anything else, is light. Light and music and love, intensifying with every sphere they pass through. The whole of paradise vibrating with a kind of joy that increases the closer they move to its source. The moon is the first sphere, soft and silver. And here are souls who kept their vows imperfectly, not through their own choices, but through the force of others. Among them is a young woman named Piccarda, gentle and luminous. And Dante asks her whether she wishes she were higher up, somewhere with a fuller joy. And she says something that stops the poem in its tracks for a moment. She says that in God's will is our peace, that she is entirely, completely happy, not despite being where she is, but because where she is exactly right for her. Her will is perfectly aligned with the love that orders everything, and in that alignment there's nothing missing and nothing wanting. It is, in a way, the destination the whole poem has been moving towards, stated here near the beginning of Paradise by a minor soul in the first sphere, almost in passing. Mercury is next, bright and quick, holding souls who did good but were partly moved by the desire for recognition. Jupiter holds the just rulers whose souls spell out a line from scripture in light across the sky and then slowly transform into the shape of an eagle, the symbol of divine justice. And the eagle speaks in one voice about the mystery of judgment, about the vastness of what we cannot see or calculate, about the need to trust a justice that's larger than human comprehension. Saturn holds the contemplatives, the souls who gave their lives entirely to prayer and stillness. The sphere is silent. Music would be too much here, and a golden ladder descends from it upwards into regions Dante cannot yet see. The souls climb it and disappear into the light above. As they rise through the sphere of the fixed stars, Dante looks back down through everything they have passed, all 7 spheres and beyond, is the small blue earth far below, and all of human history playing out on its surface. And from this height it looks very small, and the feuds and corruptions and desperate ambition of men look very small too, and Dante finds this emboldening. 3 apostles appear, Peter, James and John, and they examine Dante on faith and hope and charity, and Dante answers them carefully and sincerely, and they are satisfied. And Adam appears, the first man, speaking from a great brightness, and tells Dante that his exile from Eden lasted less than 1,000 years before the harrowing of hell brought him to the joy he now knows forever. The primum mobile is the outermost of the moving spheres, the one that gives motion to all the others. Here Dante sees a point of light so intense that he can barely look at it, and around it 9 concentric rings revolving, and understands that what he is seeing is the spiritual reality that underlies the physical universe, the love that causes everything to move. And then they pass beyond all of this into the Empyrean. There is no sense of motion here, no sense of location. Space and time belong to the physical universe, and the physical universe is behind them. What Dante sees first is a river of light, warm, golden, flowing between banks of extraordinary flowers, with figures of light moving between the river and the flowers in movements of pure joy. He is told to look more carefully. As he looks, the river resolves itself, and what was a river of light becomes a vast rose, an immense, luminous, open flower, tier upon tier of petalled seats, each one occupied by a glowing soul. The whole assembly bathed in a beam of light descending from the very highest point. He turns to ask Beatrice something. She is no longer beside him. She is in her seat in the rose, far above. She is smiling. One last time across a great distance, before she turns her face back towards the eternal light. And that is the last he sees of her. A smile, and then she is turned away, and she is home. And the long love story that began when they were children and ran through everything, through her death and his grief and his wandering and the dark forest and the whole journey, arrives here at its right ending. Saint Bernard of Clairvaux stands at Dante's side, the great mystic, the theologian of love. He is the right guide for these last steps, because what lies ahead is beyond reason, beyond meditation, beyond anything that can be approached, except stillness in grace. Bernard prays to Mary. The prayer is formal and deeply felt, and it asks simply that this one living man be granted the grace to look upon God. And Mary hears it and grants it and looks at Dante and then looks upward. And Bernard tells Dante to follow her gaze. Dante looks, and the poem keeps going. It reaches, it offers image after image, each one attempting to come a little closer to something that is, by nature, beyond what images can hold. He sees light. He sees in the light all the scattered things of the universe gathered together. Every separate piece of creation drawn into a single point, held there by love. He sees three circles of light, like a rainbow reflected in a rainbow, of different colours but the same size, and the circles seem to flow from one to another, and in the second circle he sees somehow the shape of a human being. The human and the divine, not separate. The Word made flesh, written into the deepest structure of reality. He reaches mentally towards understanding, and for one moment, a flash, a single point of light in the mind, something resolves. He cannot hold it. He cannot bring it back into language, but it was there. And then it is over, and he is still. His will, his desire, his whole self, moved now, he says, like a wheel, turning evenly, without resistance, without effort, without any remainder of struggle, by the love that moves the sun and all the other stars. And this is where the poem ends. A man who was lost in a dark forest has travelled through the entire architecture of the afterlife, from the very bottom to the very top, from the frozen lake at the centre of the earth edge of the universe, and arrived not at triumph, not at proclamation, but at stillness, at peace. Dante never went home to Florence. He lived the rest of his life in exile, moving between cities, writing, and he finished this poem just before he died in 1321. His bones are in Ravenna. Florence has asked for them back many times over the centuries. Ravenna has always said no. It doesn't matter very much in the end. The poem is where he lives now, and it has been open to anyone who wanted to make the journey for 700 years, and it will be open for 700.